Hey everyone, this is Josh for another episode of the Solopreneur Grind Podcast. Very happy to be joined by Emily, the founder at Female Founder Space. Emily, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Thanks for having me.
Can we start, Emily, with a quick introduction, a little bit more about who you are and kind of what you're working on these days?
Yeah, of course. So I'm Emily. I'm based in Malta, and I am a classic kind of entrepreneur founder, I guess. So I've worked across a lot of different areas in my career. So I started my career in HR and recruitment. Then I moved into kind of business analysis and process improvement, project management. And that made me a classic kind of operations person in my career. And then what I started to do was I started to support founders and work as their operations director. So I had that role for multiple different companies and different kinds of companies. I started doing that in corporate roles, found corporate roles a bit boring, and started to support kind of smaller founders with their businesses. And I was kind of their right-hand person doing the things that founders don't necessarily enjoy doing. So more about actually putting things in place, making things work, keeping the founder accountable. And and then I made a business out of that. So I started doing business operations consulting, working with founders, mostly with marketing agencies, but kind of all different service-based founders. And now I have founded the Female Founder Space, which is a community to help female founders on a wider level so I can provide my advice and help them move their businesses forward.
Awesome. And I'm excited to talk operations because that definitely seems like something that for solopreneurs who have to wear so many hats, that tends to be one of the things that either they don't enjoy or they never really put that much effort into kind of optimizing. Before
Yeah.
we do, can you share a little bit of the story around? It sounds like you had a great career in the corporate world, shall we say? Can you walk
Yeah.
us through when and how you decided to ultimately go out on your own? What was that decision making like? What was kind of the deciding factor?
So I think when I was working in corporates, it was great in terms of learning. Everything's always good in terms of learning. So it was nice to work in corporate, like work with big clients and get a lot of experience there. For me, I found it very slow moving and I felt kind of like a very small piece of a very big puzzle. And I felt like I wasn't really having, I didn't make any difference to the company or I was just such a small part. So I think I just didn't find it very inspiring once I've been doing it for quite a long time. So I went quite far and I was quite senior and that was great, but it just didn't fill me like personally. I didn't enjoy it. So then I actually moved to Malta, I was still working for big corporations then, but then I sought out an opportunity to work with a small business founder and took on the opportunity to work with him as like the right hand person to help him run his, at the time was an architect studio. And I think working with business founders kind of inspired me to start my own thing. So I think working with founders and seeing everything they do and like how much vision they have and how much drive they have really gave me the inspiration to start my own thing through working with really great people on the way. And then I thought, well, I can do this as well. So I've got the experience of helping someone else grow their business. So I thought, okay, I'm going to do mine now. So I think that's it.
And can you talk a little bit like how did you make that transition? Because there's certainly a lot of people out there who are working, they're employed
Yeah.
and they're thinking about making the jump, and it's really hard to find like that perfect time, so to speak. Did you kind of like side hustle it and keep your main job for a while? Did you pull the plug? What was kind of the decision making on when, like exactly when and how to do it for you?
So I started it as a side hustle. So I started doing consulting on the side of my day job. Openly, luckily for me, not everyone can do that, but I was in a position to do that. So I was consulting for other businesses, and it took me quite a long time to make the decision because I value security. So I've got a small kid and obviously like financial burden, and so I wanted to do it for a lot longer than I decided. Then it took me to make the decision. So how I actually came to the decision was that I started reaching out to warm potential clients, I guess. So I started to build up my network quite a long time before that. So I used LinkedIn, like talk to people, having chats with people, and attending as many things as possible to build up my network purposefully and play the long game. And then when I was kind of nearly ready to try and make the switch, I just reached out to people and pulled in all the favors I could. So I said, hey, I really enjoyed working with you. Do you know anyone else who, is in a similar situation to you? And I think if you can find some really people who like you and are really positive about you, and you normally have a small network of like promoters of you usually. And if you reach out to those people and just say, I really need your help. Can you please do this? You know this person. Can you please put me in touch with them and say something nice about me? People will really do that. So I think you should ask for as much help as possible when you want to make that decision. And then because I did that, I wasn't quite ready to hand in my notice. But then I landed another client. I was like, okay, so now I'm making a level of money that is okay for me, so I can give them my notice. And then one of my promoters, one of my positive people, then put a post on LinkedIn, and I got 4 other clients from that post. So it's really building up your network way before you even think you need it. So just have random conversations, go to things that you think are interesting, just meet as many people as possible, and then lean into and ask for as much help as you can. People are really happy to help always. Like, people always promote other people doing things and when they want to make a change. So ask for as much help as possible.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of half answered my next question, which was, how did you get your first few clients? And or, sales is obviously super important for solopreneurs. Number one, it can be hard, especially if you don't have much sales experience. Any other advice for someone who's maybe thinking of making the jump, and or maybe they're started their own solopreneur business, but they're struggling to get as much sales through the door as they'd like? Anything else? Those were some really great pieces of advice, right? Build a network, lean on them when you can. Anything else, or
Yeah.
especially as you've grown recently, that has worked well?
So you have to get comfortable with sales if you're a solopreneur. Like, I think it probably, in a lot of cases, the thing that people, for some reason, don't think is the primary part of the business, but it is. Like, especially when you're starting out, if you're not having sales, what is the point of the rest of your business? So you have to make sure that you're dedicating a lot of time to it, like to business development in general. So part of that is building your network. A key thing that I've learned, which really works for me and my audience, and I think works much wider, is people don't love cold sales. No one likes doing it, and no one really likes receiving it either. Its success rate is quite low. So to think about a much better sales process for yourself, and usually that is empathetic sales, which is like building up proper relationships with people where possible. So it depends on your exact product and what exactly you're selling. So obviously, if you're selling quite a high ticket thing, which is like consulting or something that's quite high value, you should be definitely putting a lot of effort into building relationships with people, because it will take them quite a lot to build that trust in you and everything. If it's something quite low ticket, like something that's worth like $10 or something, obviously you can't put that amount of effort into the volume of people, but you do have to think about a sales approach, like usually something like a lead magnet, like giving them value for like winning them over with getting you in front of them through lead magnets, which can be sent cold, but you can't send someone like a cold pitch. You can't say, hey, would you like to work with me? It just won't work. So it's really thinking and testing and not being scared to test. You're going to be rejected about 99% of the time. So just That's like, just get comfortable with that. And then, or just get ignored, not necessarily rejected, ignored or rejected. So you have to be really comfortable with that. And then just test and see, okay, so this is really working. Let me try this a bit more, and just keep going with it and be really consistent, be doing outreach and relationship building consistently.
Yeah, I was just having a conversation with someone in my network who was so busy at one point doing his file work that then when it ended, he didn't have a pipeline. And so now it's super quiet, right? And this is a
Yeah.
huge problem for solopreneurs, which is you only have so much time in the day. It's hard to do fulfillment as well as maintaining your sales and marketing at the same time. To your point about cold, I mean, I don't know about you. I get so many cold emails and DMs these days because
Yeah.
of like AI and automation. It is just horrible. So don't do that. I agree with everything you said. Build the relationship, add value. I think it's great advice. Emily, I'd love to shift now to, so let's talk about that fulfillment, operations. Can you start maybe like, what are the biggest one or two struggles that a lot of solopreneurs or small business owners struggle with on the operation side? And what do you typically recommend for those pain points?
So most people's limitation is their time, so that they don't have enough time to do everything that they need to do. So um, a really key thing, I think, is to cost up your own time. So to say, if like I cost $200 an hour, for example, that's how much I charge out to people my time. If I get someone to help with X tasks in my business and they are cheaper than me, can I make things easier for myself, make more money because I have more time for sales? So I think a key switch is to put values on everything. So if you're spending a lot of time in delivery, probably not all that time is necessarily needs to be you, or you add value to. Some of it will be kind of boring, fast. Some will be done by someone else, like reporting or some kind of monotonous task that you need to deliver for a client, like preparing slide decks, doing whatever it is. Someone else can help with that. So if you, for example, get someone to help in admin and free up 5 hours of your time doing some of those things, it's cheaper than your time, and then you can spend your time either servicing another client or on business development to get other clients. So I think it's really important to understand the value of your time, and therefore whether all the tasks that you're doing are useful.
And do you think someone should start with that right out of the gate? Because I would say probably most people, like it sounded like you started your business in almost the perfect way. You had two clients already, and soon after you were able to add more. Let's say someone's starting or they're even side hustling. They only have like one or two clients. They're not generating a ton of money yet. Should they
Yeah,
start with that outsourcing right away still, just so that they can spend more time on sale? Or do you think that they should kind of get to a certain threshold first?
I think if you're not busy, you should be spending 50% of your time on sales, like 50%. So I think that if you say have 25% of your time on delivery and you've still got time left, great. But if you've got 50% of your time in delivery and you've got 50% left, that should be spent on sales, because that will get you the results that you need faster. So that if you put that 5 of those hours into admin, it's not going to grow your business.
Hmm,
So as long
I
as
like
it's
that.
not going to put you into debt, like, I mean, as long as you can afford it, then you should do it, because you will get returns on it way faster than by doing the admin. But you should be break even. And obviously it depends a bit on your personal circumstances in terms of like whether you can afford to do that. But yeah, you should be breaking even. And you, like, and worst case is if it continues and you're not making sales from the activity you're doing, you can just turn that off. You can turn that support off. But it's definitely worth trying to, like, you need to spend 50% of your time when you're kicking off a business, like, to generate those sales. And great if it comes quicker, you can reduce that time to kind of 25%, but consistently you need to spend 25% of your time doing sales and business development, even when and that should be your full capacity. So if you're at full capacity with delivery, you have to reduce that time and dedicate some of that time to sales and business development. Otherwise, you do not have a sustainable business. Your business is only reliant on that early stage referrals, which I mentioned, which is great to get you started, but that is not sustainable. That dries up. So you have to be putting consistently time into that. So you need to, probably the easiest thing to outsource is things like basic admin tasks.
Yeah, I like that because number one, you're working with hard numbers, so people can sit down and look at their day and say, okay, am I
Yeah.
spending at least 50% of it on sales or not, or 25%, whatever it may be. And secondly, I would assume if someone's spending at least half their day on fulfillment, then that's because they have paying work to do. So you should
Yeah.
have some revenue coming in to
Yeah.
to hire or outsource or whatever it might be. When it comes to outsourcing, let's talk about tools and tips there. Are we hiring a VA? Are we implementing more AI? Are we buying more software? Like, obviously a little bit case by case here, but what do you recommend to a solopreneur who's maybe looking to make that first sort of investment, let's call it, into handing off more of that admin work?
So I think it depends a bit on you, because some people are great with using tools and taking on AI and building those processes. And if you are strong in that, that's the way to go, because it's very cost effective and can give you huge efficiencies. However, when you're quite time poor, it's quite hard to learn and set up exactly what you need. So it might be more cost effective to just get someone else to do it for you. You have to weigh up your ability and the time that's still, if you set up AI tools, like, it's still reliant on you quite a lot to give the right inputs and everything. And it can be great, especially in terms of the output that it can do, and you can set up automations and stuff. If you're strong in that, go for that route. If you're not strong in that, go for a VA. You'll spend too long trying to learn it and you won't manage.
And any advice on the VA side? I mean, especially these days, it's become so popular. Lots of options, right? You could find someone one-on-one. You could find someone through Fiverr. You could find someone through Upwork. You could find people in this country, in that country. Any advice? Like, do you have a particular way of hiring, a particular place that you like to hire from?
So it depends on the task that needs to get done. I mean, when you're in either a solopreneur or like a really small business, your costs are limiting. So outsourcing, I think getting outsourced from, a cheaper place basically is the best way to do it. I personally use like an outsourced company that I trust that provide that value, and then they replace them if anything were to happen to them. And that's who I recommend to a lot of people. And that works great, because the problem is with places with Fiverr, there's not much like quality checks or control. It's kind of a race to the bottom with it. It's still reliant on you to find the person to do the project. So I like outsourced companies to find the budget that I want, and they also help with giving them the best arrangement as well. So it's like, for me, that's the best way when you're on a limited budget. If you want something like marketing or some kind of specialist thing that requires, like for me, for marketing, I do need someone Western based to do some of the marketing activities for the audience, because they obviously understand it a bit better and can cater it that way. So for certain things, I do pay a specialist that's like more Westernized, who is more expensive. And yeah, so it depends on the exact task, but I think don't go above your budget. I mean, think about what you're happy to spend on it and spend that. You can find someone within your budget.
Awesome. Going back to kind of your journey, Emily, what would you say was the hardest thing for you? What was the biggest struggle you have or have?
I think I'm kind of okay with risk. Like, I always think that it's a really good idea to test things and just go for it. But I always have this fear about not having consistent income coming in. As in, I think I might lose clients, and then what am I going to do? And I kind of catastrophize. And I think that's much harder to deal with when you're working alone, and you know that everything is on you. So you have to keep up with all the sales, you have to get with the networking. So you're not in the mood to have a sales call and it doesn't go very well, I think that's a lot of pressure all on one person. Whereas if you're working in a big team and obviously someone else is responsible for sales, it's not really your problem, or you don't have visibility of it. So I think it's just a huge amount of pressure. And I really feel that, like, sometimes I feel really positive and excited, and sometimes I feel like everything might just come crashing down next month. That's my biggest struggle, but the way that I deal with that is by, like, kind of not, I don't actually say it aloud, but I kind of really, like, think it through properly. And I'm like, really, am I really going to lose that client like tomorrow? Are they happy with me? Are they not happy with me? And then I kind of question those negative thoughts or things that might make me feel less confident. And then if I do that, then they're normally wrong, and then you can kind of move on for it. But I think you'd have to accept that there is a bit of that when you've got so much responsibility and you're covering so many different things, and you might not likely to be amazing at all of them because you're taking on a whole load of new skills that you've never had to do before. So of course you're going to have a bit of a lack of confidence, particularly when it comes to maybe sales and marketing, or like finances. Like, people feel quite nervous about handling finances and stuff, or handling how to manage a new team member. So of course you're going to have a bit of lack of confidence when you have to do those things. But I think you have to accept that, question it, and say, like, what's the worst that can happen, and then move on.
Yeah, I mean, it made me think of kind of that fear setting exercise that, I've read from Tim Ferriss, and I think a little bit of like a Jeff Bezos too, where they would ask like, well, what would happen if I didn't do that, or if that did happen, right? So like in your case, if you really did lose that one client, your business wouldn't entirely collapse, right? You have a few others,
Yeah,
you have a
yeah,
good network, right? But
yeah.
I totally agree, especially when you're by yourself and you're in your head a little bit too much. We've all certainly been there. What would you recommend, Emily, especially as someone who helps with operations? What are maybe two or three tools, or, you know, tech, or other, products that you would recommend, kind of like a day to day or like a weekly basis, that could help a solopreneur operate more efficiently?
So what I think really helps, it's not a tool, but I set up a scorecard with everyone that I work with, and I think everyone should do it. So I think you need to have a good understanding of what how you measure the success of your business, of all areas of that. And I think you need to be setting yourself targets so that you know whether you're achieving those or not. So I just create a really basic Google sheet or Excel sheet, whatever it is. And I list out, okay, so if I'm successful, what is my target for, like, how many conversations do I need to have this week to get the revenue that I want? How much new revenue do I need to sign this week? And I have a list for sales and marketing, and then I have a list for operations, for example. Like, how many things went wrong this week? Like, what did I have a problem with? Did I make any errors? Did anyone else make any errors on my behalf? List out those things. And then when you start to see themes, you think, okay, so I had 5 invoices go out wrong this week. Maybe I need some help with that because I'm obviously not getting that right. So you list out those things in that way. And obviously the critical ones, the finance ones. So you just look at your forecast for the next couple of months. Are you going to be profitable or not? Like your profit margin forecast, your cash flow, and you keep week on week, you keep track of those key metrics, and you check them yourself and say, where do I need to focus? Is it money coming in? And therefore, if there's no money coming in, why? Am I not making enough phone calls? Am I not, like, getting enough leads in? And because you've got the key metrics laid out, you can then say, okay, so what I need to do is push this. I need to come up with a way of getting more leads in, or I'm making loads of mistakes here. Let me get a finance person to help with that.
I like it. I like it. I definitely find that a lot of solopreneurs just don't have that level of kind of like tracking and accountability. And so
Yeah.
making as much stuff as objective as possible, like you said earlier, with, the time, evaluating what percentage on time and stuff like that. So I totally agree. Emily, this has been really great. I would say my second last question is always, let's say there is a solopreneur out there, maybe they're just getting started, maybe they're at the early stages or kind of struggling to grow. What is the one or two key pieces of advice you'd give to them?
don't be scared to try stuff. So push yourself with messaging people that are potential contacts. Like, just message everyone. Just as soon as you start with things like that, they become way easier, and you just build confidence really quickly. And you'd be surprised at how positive people are about people starting businesses. So you do get quite a good response. So really, don't be scared to message people. Don't be scared to ask for help, because you will get a positive response. And get really comfortable with finances. Like, keep an eye on your finances and keep track on that, because that's how you grow a business, is by keeping an eye on your finances and making sure you're not spending too much, you're making enough, and just take the right action, be methodical and take the right action, and get help or get support with the things you help with that. If you're rubbish at marketing, find out more, learn it, test things that will work for you. So push yourself a bit with confidence and keep an eye on your finances.
Awesome. Emily, this has been really great. Really appreciate you taking the time, coming on the show, sharing some of this advice. If anybody wants to connect with you or follow you or learn more about your business, where do you recommend that they go?
So I'm very active on LinkedIn. So you can follow me on LinkedIn. My name's Emily Hatton. I'm very easy to find. My business is the Female Founders Space, and we're a community so that I can help female founders build their businesses. So I give this kind of advice, very straightforward, very direct. You need to do these things to build your business. And I give actionable things, and I ask everyone to set goals every week about where they're going to go next with their business. And it really makes a difference to getting people to grow.
Awesome. We will have links to both of those in the description, the LinkedIn profile and the website, whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcast platform. Emily, thanks again for coming on the show. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's been really nice.